Finding Valak, or is it Volak? Hunting the Demon in the Nun. Finding Valak, or is it Volak? Hunting the Demon in the Nun. That's a movie. You know, that reminds me of something in Scientology where there were some critics of Scientology talking about how L. Ron Hubbard couldn't make up his mind between whether their biggest adversary was this being called Xenu, spelled Xenu, or was it Xemu, Xemu? Because he says it two different ways in some of his recordings. And I made a parody of, a song title as a parody of it called Finding Xenu, like Finding Nemo, ha ha ha. I think it was Finding, did I do Zemu or Xenu? I don't even remember, I make so much music, but they surely picked a very obscure demon to use in the movie The Nun, which is cool because you could take all kinds of liberties with it. So basically, they spelled it Valak, V-A-L-A-C, and the only reference in any of the text that I have towards Volak or Valak is the same one that I found online everywhere, which comes from the, I think, Wire's Pseudomonarchia, or is it the Dictionnaire Infernal? I don't remember which one it is, but in one of those, there's, I have the cards. I don't know where they found it on. Actually, it's in the in my Demon Tarot cards that I have here. So I also have a Dictionary of Angels by Gustav Davidson, which I've had for probably, I don't know, almost 20 years. It's been a while. I had it when it first came out. I think the first, no, I didn't. I didn't have it when it first came out because it came out 10 years before I was born. And it came out in 1967. So I had it a long time ago, at least 20 years. At least that's when the book was published at first. A dictionary of angels, including the falling angels. And I looked in the book because that's where I first actually found Nurgle, which was a demon that screamed at me one day when I was sleeping, when I was trying to talk to figure out which one of the guys from the movie The Secret said a very stupid thing on Larry King Live. And I narrowed it down to two of them, and I was having a dream with them, and Nurgle said its name to me 3 times. It whispered it twice and then screamed it at me when I asked what. And then I got this book sometime later and found Nurgle in there. I'm going to get to Valak. I'm going to look one more time. I mean, it's possible that I missed it, but I don't think so. But it's definitely not in this 1967 edition of the Dictionary of Angels. At least what I thought. So let's take a look at the V's here. And we got everything from the Virgin Mary. Let's see. I'm going to look V-A-L-A-K, how they spelled it in the movie The Nun. It's not in there. We have Valiance and we have Valmoon, and that's it for the V-A-Ls. And then the way that it's spelled in the cards that I have, which comes from Dictionnaire Infernal, the Infernal Dictionary, it's V-O-L-O-C. And let me see, we have, no, it's not in there. It ends with V-O-I-Z-A. We have Voil, which is and then we have Voiza, and then Volval, but we don't have Volak or Valak. And the Valak, that demon in the Nun, took on the appearance of a nun to kind of be blasphemous towards the religion, the Catholic religion. So, and all I have is this one reference to Volak or Valak in from the Dictionnaire Infernal from Colin de Plancy's. His full name is Jacques Auguste Simon Colin de Plancy, and that's the only one that I have. It's the only place I can find, and that's the one that you'll see the same pictures referenced in online when you look for Valak or Volak, and so it says Volak, and here it's spelled Volac. In the movie they spell it Valak, Valak. So Volak is a president of hell in command of 30 infernal legions, according to Wire's Pseudomonarchia Demonium. Oh, I was right. So the images, the illustrations are by Louis Breton from Jacques-Auguste Simon Colin de Plancy's Dictionnaire Infernal, or the Infernal Dictionary. And but according to Wire's Pseudomonarchia Demonium, or Demonum, pseudo-monarchy or false monarchy, so demons, false monarchy. His face and figure are those of a beautiful young boy child with the wings of an angel. His voice is soft and sweet, and his demeanor is gentle and kind. To all appearances, Volak could be the visual inspiration for the Renaissance putti, but for his choice of transport, a ferocious two-headed dragon. So, Volak is gentle and is a gentle and non-violent demon by all accounts. That was funny when I first read that in here, because of the fact that the demon that took the appearance of a nun in the movie was pretty freaking violent. So Volak is gentle and non-violent demon by all accounts, but he has the gift of communication with all serpents. He'd be talking to me. His gift allows him to find any snake in the world, and he can speak to it, and it will answer his questions and follow his commands. And so, although Volak does not look very powerful, he has at his disposal a host of powerful and clever creatures, from the great dragon he uses as a steed to the tiny grass snakes that can seek the locations of hidden treasures. So that's what we got about Volak there. That's all I could find. And like I said, I have the Demon Tower is a great resource for looking up some stuff in demonology, which, and if you look at most of the things, one of the things about exorcisms is that you have to know the demon's name to exorcise it, which is interesting, because some years ago, I had realized that you could technically exorcise certain things out of yourself if you wanted to with practice, by just naming what it is you were feeling. So instead of trying to pretend that wasn't there, right, you name your anger. You say, this is anger, this is hatred, this is rage, this is sadness, this is whatever, melancholy, and then you can talk it out of yourself if you have the patience and the wherewithal to want to do that. It's possible. And you can, and I used to imagine them as like these like rubbery, like weird creatures, like sort of like those, I forget what they were called in the few times I've seen Power Rangers on TV, but they were these generic, I don't know, martial arts like gummy thing. I don't know what the hell they were called, but there was a whole bunch of them anyway. They were kind of like the fodder, the infantry for the main bad guys. And so I would imagine anger and rage and hatred and things like that as kind of like those things, with printed across their chest, like branded on them, would be the emotion that I was fighting. And so I'd make it an actual battle. And so this is the thing in exorcisms, is it's best if you know the demon you're fighting, and when you know it, you can call it out of the person and get rid of it. So there's some interesting things. There's a lot of discrepancies in all the resources you'll find of demonic possession. So starting with from Lorraine and Ed Warren, who most of the movies in the Annabelle universe, like The Conjuring and the Annabelle movies and whatnot, and The Haunting and whatever, some of the movies they show, and the Annabelle movies they show, actually the Nun movies too, especially, they show them talking about that possession has, demonic influence has these three parts. Ed Warren says infestation, oppression, and possession. And then there was a fun movie I was watching the other day called Deliver Us from Evil, and it was with Eric Bana, which I really liked him in the Incredible Hulk movie. Actually, that was one of my favorite Hulk movies. And the priest in that movie said that there are 5 stages to exorcism, and it was presence, pretense, breakpoint, voice, clash, and then expulsion. And then as I looked more, I found that there was a church in Florida that had 7 steps of demonic possession, and 3 of them, 4, 5, and 6, 5, 6, and 7, are similar to some other ones I found. But these 7 steps of demonic possession are regression and repression. That's 1 and 2. And 3, 4, and 5 are suppression, depression, and oppression. And then 6 and 7 are obsession and possession. And I don't know why the way it was listed had them in 3 sets. It had regression and repression in set 1 as 1 and 2. And set 2 it had 3, 4, and 5, suppression, depression, and oppression. And in set 3 it had 6 and 7 as obsession and possession. And they gave 7 ways to get rid of the demons, which were progressive living. I could see that. Exuberant expression, that's nice. Having a joyful spirit. Faith confession. Fixation on God. I think that's a very important one if you really understand God. Yes, I'm claiming to understand God, because it's not complicated. It's not rocket science, and it's not even religious mumbo jumbo. It's understanding God as simple as understanding that all knowledge and all power is in all places at all times. It's understanding the namaste. Next one is guarding of willpower. That's good. And deliverance ministry, which I might get to later. Then there was another priest who said there's 4 degrees of demonic possession. His name is Amorth, Amorth. I think it's Gabriel Amorth. And his 4 degrees were infestation. That matches up with what Ed Warren said. And it gives some details. Infestation is where you hear footsteps, voices, apparitions, moving objects, odors. Infestation only affects property, objects, and animals. I also put in question marks thermal, with like thermal being there. And my thesis that I'm going to be going on a lot about is the fact that all supernatural entities of any kind, whether they be aliens or religious, have the same features, where they can speak telepathically, they can move objects telekinetically, and also maybe have thermokinesis. They can change the temperature. And I wonder what would be the word for, would it be olfactokinesis? It's like olfactory and sense of smell, or yeah, that would be an interesting one to look up. Like smells and things like that. So that's infestation. So then you have the second degree is oppression. And oppression is listed as, some description as physical attacks, sleep disturbances, illness, depression, anxiety, and then this one's interesting. It says severe financial or unemployment and relationship troubles. But then it goes on to explain, it says all at once. It said they have to be all at once. I put a question mark there because I was thinking, man. But see, in the sense of demonic possession, this is all true in the way that I understand demonic possession or demonic influence. Is that anything that's bad or evil you could say is demonic or from the devil, but that's just a label you put on, like a title, right? It's not. We're not talking about them actually having demonic personalities, unless you're going to admit what I'm talking about here, which is that they're tulpas that we create as people. We create them, and we can give them whatever names we want to, but they have to have a name. Relationship all at once. You can. I mean, a demon could be. There can be an unemployment demon. If you recall or ever had the knowing and understanding that peoples in ancient times, and a lot of times in some places remain to use this labeling system, or whatever you like to call it, this practice they have of naming everything and giving everything like a spirit, or some, I wouldn't even say, I said ancient peoples, right? Like even in indigenous cultures, there's a spirit of the water, spirit of this and that, right? Everything has a spirit. So there's a spirit of unemployment, right? But in order to combat the spirit of unemployment, we have to conjure and think about the spirit of prosperity. And I wouldn't say the spirit of employment, because employment these days amounts many times to slavery. I know, just because I drive a lot of people to work all the time. And the things that I hear about people about their jobs, they don't want to do them. So, all right, so fourth degree is obsession, where people are preoccupied with thoughts of demonic activity and or thoughts of suicide, and have extreme sleep difficulty. And all of those, Father Gabriel Amorth says, can be handled with deliverance ministry, or deliverance minister, which was interesting because the text that I got from Florida, the last thing it said, that deliverance ministry is a way of dealing with demonic possession. But then the fourth degree is actual possession. From G.M. Worth, it says, free will is never removed. See, I agree with this here. It's like with all things about free will in hypnosis. I look at a lot of things as a hypnoanalyst, right? My Institute of Metaphysical Hypnosis it practices hypnoanalysis. So as a and by the way, this is just a fun name that I created another organization out of. I graduated from the Hypnosis Motivation Institute, which is HMI, and so I created IMH, which is the Institute of Metaphysical Hypnosis, whereas HMI is the Hypnosis Motivation Institute. I have the Institute of Metaphysical Hypnosis, and so we practice hypnoanalysis. So it says free will is never removed, but severely compromised by being overwhelmed by the things happening in degrees 1 through 3, which are infestation, oppression, and obsession. So that demonic spirits seize occasional control over a person's actions. And this is where people can have superhuman strength, speak in tongues, have aversions to religious or blessed objects, talk about psychic things, like they know your thoughts, or past and future things. And there might be some physical changes, like their face changes or whatever. So now this is from the similar. I wonder if Worth had any influence on the guys in Florida, or vice versa, because in the steps 5, 6, and 7 are oppression, obsession, and possession from their 7 steps, and he has that as degrees 2, 3, and 4. So that's interesting. And then his first one, infestation, shares that with what Ed Warren talks about. And as far as what I know from the movies Annabelle Universe and the Conjuring. So then you have somebody named B.D. Ouellette, who is a priest somewhere also. I wrote these all down in a notebook. And it's stages of demonic possession. And one thing he says that I find very interesting as well is that belief equals the reality of demons. So he also agrees in that way. And he has these stages. Stage 1 is identification, where there's no discernment between anxiety, depression, or spiritual. And so he says stay spiritually and physically healthy. Stage 2 is escalation, where stronger and more severe symptoms that are different from mental illness and unexplainable. There's suicidal ideation, night terrors, loss of reality, and nightmares. Stage 3 is demonic obsession, where there's physical illness, where medical treatment does not resolve, or psychiatric and psychological treatment does not resolve. And then stage 4 is demonic oppression, which is speaking in tongues, superhuman strength, clairvoyance, ocular changes, like changes to serpentine, or like looks like a snake, disdain for blessed and holy objects, levitation, doppelgangers, and environmental disturbances. So let's see, what are those some similarities there to, because 3 and 4 is obsession, and then he has oppression. let's see. Whereas the previous ones have oppression first and then obsession. Here he has BDOLF has obsession first and then oppression. So that's interesting. And his oppression, his stage 4, is similar to the possession of Father Gabriel Amorth, where you have the speaking in tongues, superhuman strength, and all that other stuff like that. So there's some similarities here. And I wonder if we can, simplify them down to just 3. I mean, all the 7 and 5 and 4. I don't like those numbers. I like the ideas of Nikola Tesla, where the 3, 6, and 9. And I want to keep it at 3. 9 is nice for me, but I don't know. 7, 5 is actually okay too. Where I like the idea of the exorcism coming in 5 parts: presence, pretense, breakpoint, voice, clash, and expulsion. Man, if you guys ever get a chance to watch the movie Deliver Us from Evil, which is different from the documentary about. So there was a priest in California who the Catholic Church kept on moving from church to church, where he violated hundreds of children and some adults. They just kept on moving him from one different Catholic church to the next, and he still runs free in Rome somewhere, just not having suffered no consequences. They just kept on moving this guy around. So there's a documentary about that guy, and it's called Deliver Us from Evil. But the Deliver Us from Evil I'm talking about is the one with Eric Bana. He's a police officer. It's supposedly also based on a true story, a police officer named Sarchi. And but I like how they depicted those 5 steps. It was really, really cool. It was such a cool way, because they called it out: presence, pretense, breakpoint, voice, clash, and expulsion. So it gave a nice visual example of what they were talking about with those things. So I like how they brought that to life in that movie. But I haven't found Volak or Valak anywhere except in the cards that I have. And let's do a quick search here on. I remember the last time I typed in Valak, V-A-L-A-K, and that's all I had to do. And the first thing that came up was the picture that I have on the card from the deck that I have, the Demon Tarot, that uses the images, the carvings, the engravings from the Infernal Dictionary, and a description from Wyer's False Monarchy of Demons. And so that picture shows up, that image shows up, and it says Valak is a demon described in the Goetic grimoires, the Lesser Key of Solomon, and so on and so forth. And then it has Valak, the Conjuring Universe Wiki. Valak, also known by its alternate avatars, the Nun or the Crooked Man, is the overall main antagonist of the Conjuring universe, serving as the overarching antagonist of the 2013 horror film The Conjuring, the main antagonist of The Conjuring 2, The Nun, and The Nun 2, the overarching agonist of Annabelle Creation. So she shows up. And then it has some history. In ancient times, Valak, they're spelling it here V-A-L-A-K, whereas the card I have is V-O-L-A-C. It says, in ancient times, Valak was once an angel in heaven who served God. However, a fellow angel named Lucifer rebelled against God and gathered other angels to become his followers, including Valak. After the rebellion, Lucifer, Valak, and the other angels were cast out of heaven. Lucifer became Satan, and Valak and the other angels who were cast down became demons. In the process, Valak was not only stripped of its status as an angel, but was also stripped of its special powers it had as an angel. Valak appeared in written form in Pseudo-Monarchia Demonum, the false monarchy of demons, like I just said, right? The text was an appendix in the 1577 grimoire De Prestigiis Demonum, on the tricks of demon. Prestige, the prestige. De Prestigiis, spelled here D-E-P-R-A-E-S-T-I-G-I-I-S. De Prestigiis Demonum, on the tricks of demons, by Johann Wyer, who himself was a Dutch physician, renowned occultist and demonologist. So, but that's the only. These are the only places you'll find it. There's no other it's just this stuff online, and everything comes back to the movie The Nun, and everything goes back to the resource I have. So it's really interesting that they picked they picked a very obscure demon that doesn't have a lot of literature behind it except in a few places, and which is good because they took a lot of I mean, we can all kind of say that it's all poetic license or a lot of creativity going on there, but now I'm gonna look at some other ones because the demon that he had to, because they kept on screaming, they were like, "Tell me your name, demon," in Deliver Us from Evil, because remember that's one of the ways that you, in order to exorcise a demon, you have to know its name, or at least that's one of the best ways to deal with it. So I'm going to look up, the one in Deliver Us from Evil was called Jungler. I wonder if Jungler's in the, let me take a look real quick here at Dictionary of Angels. I don't know, it sounds really, it kind of sounds made up, jungler, like a jungle. Welcome to the jungler, we got fun and games. Well, let's see if jungler actually is in here or somewhere else. I definitely know it's not one of the ones in my my Demon Tarot, because I've had that for so long. I would recognize that name would pop up in my mind. The name stands out. Let's see. No, there's no jungler. There's starting with the JUs, we have Jukar, we have Junior, and we have Just Guarin. And Jukar is a prince over all the angels and all the Caesars, according to Mathers, the Greater Key of Solomon. Then Junier, Junier, is an ex-prince of the Order of Angels, by Garanet, The History of Magic in France, de Plancy, Dictionnaire Infernal 3. Oh, interesting, I don't have that. And Jus Guarin, a ruling angel of the 10th hour of the night. Jus Guarin has 10 chief angelic officers under him, as well as 100 lesser officers. But I wonder, could Jungler be under G's? I doubt that too, but let's take a look. The Guardians, the Ghoul Guards, Gulakok or Gulakok, Gulhab, Gurid, no jungler over there. I wonder, can I find it under Y? G, J's, Y's, and H's. Sometimes letters used interchangeably in these different older languages, and a lot of languages still today. So I just want to cover my bases here. But nope, there's no younger. We got Yura, we got Yerba, Yurkemi, and Yush. But no, and then let me just see if there's a Hungler in H. We got Huznoth. So we got, there's a lot of HUs. Let's see. Hugran, Hufaltiel, Huha, Hukia, Huya, Hulaio. No Hunger. Nothing even close. Alright. Most likely just made that up. Like all demons are kind of made up as tulpas, right? And sometimes these things come to people and then somebody else names it. So I got this really great book called Pandemonium. Nice hardcover I got from Barnes & Nobles. It's got a demon eating somebody's leg or something like that on the front cover of it. It's called Pandemonium, A Visual History of Demonology by Ed Simon. The spine of it has a beautiful binding with a bunch of, it's a red cloth binding with a bunch of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pentagrams on each side, the front and back. And it's demon with snakes and hair and some weird half bat, half peacock wings coming out of the back of it, and some fire coming out. It's crazy, pretty scary looking. And but I like what he has to say here about demonology. This is really great. I read it, and it says a visual history of demonology, but the book is very text heavy. I was surprised when I got it how text heavy it actually is. This guy is definitely a scholar. There's a lot of images, but this is a badass book. I'm pretty glad that I got it. It is one hell of a tome. And so, let's see. It starts off with a quote. It says, if I exercise my devils, well, my angels may leave too. Tom Waits, Please Call Me Baby, 1974. And says, I am not the author of the Necronomicon. For a brief and disturbing portion of time one evening several years ago, however, I questioned whether I might be. Invented by the American master of weird fiction H.P. Lovecraft and first mentioned in his short story The Hound, published in 1924, the Necronomicon is an ancient grimoire, effectively a magic book, compiled in the 8th century by a half-crazed Arab named Abdul al-Hazred, with a complex reception history that sees it variously translated into Greek, Latin, and English, condemned by the Inquisition in the 14th century and by the Puritans in the 17th, and generally flickering at the margins of human knowledge. While Lovecraft is ambiguous on the exact contents of the Necronomicon, it's generally implied that they concern the worship of entities known as the Elder Gods, ancient creatures of seemingly infinite dimension and immortal longevity who exist beyond good and evil. They are what most traditional believers might think of them as, effectively, demons. In his posthumously published 1938 fragment, History of the Necronomicon, Lovecraft describes the volume as having been rigidly suppressed by the authorities of most countries and by all branches of organized ecclesiasticism. Reading leads to terrible consequences, so you will see then why it was so unsettling to briefly question whether it was actually I who was the author, editor, and redactor of the infernal volume. And he goes on to say that the Necronomicon doesn't actually exist, that it never existed, and was only born from the fevered nightmares of Lovecraft, is no impediment to such a fear as I felt. In fact, the book's non-existence was paradoxically the cause of my anxiety. As with so many of our contemporary fabulisms, my paroxysm of terror was facilitated by modern technology, for the reason that I came to, briefly, fear that I had somehow broken beyond the bounds of time and space and authored the Necronomicon was because of a certain website named after a tropical rainforest. It was a little more than a decade ago when, bleary-eyed and under-caffeinated, I decided to see if there were any listings for the Necronomicon on said website. Despite the fictionality of the grimoire, any number of editions have been published that claimed to be the real Necronomicon, based on some ancient Babylonian or Assyrian text. On the off chance that such a claim wasn't mere grift, I thought it prudent to grab my own copy of one of these editions, as one does. And so I typed the Necronomicon into the search window. For a second, when I saw my own name, I thought that I had accidentally signed into my personal account, only to discover that the listed author of the Necronomicon was Ed Simon. Sweaty-palmed and with racing heart, I checked to see if this was some sort of algorithmic error, if I was accidentally listed as the author of Pride and Prejudice and Moby Dick as well, perhaps some wayward bit of code that reinscribed customers' names over those of the women and men who rightly wrote those books. But no, I was completely signed out of my own account, and there on my screen, for anyone looking to purchase a copy of the Necronomicon, my own name was listed as the author of what's supposedly the evilest book ever written. As it turns out, of course, I wasn't the author of that particular edition of the Necronomicon. Several incarnations of Lovecraft's imagined book have been published. In 1973, the science fiction writer L. Sprague de Camp wrote the introduction to a limited edition book with that title, which was inscribed in an undecipherable fictional language and released by an obscure press. George Hay penned a hoax version of the Necronomicon in 1978, and the Canadian occultist Donald Tyson compiled his own version in 2004, borrowing copiously from Lovecraft's writing for the book. The so-called Simon Necronomicon is by far the most popular book with that title, having sold 800,000 copies, even though it bears little resemblance to the supposed contents of the grimoire as enumerated by Lovecraft, and seems to largely draw upon ancient Sumerian mythology, Its presses claim that it was potentially the most dangerous black book known to the Western world. Undoubtedly helped to move product as well. Written as though it were a translation of a collection of genuine Mesopotamian incantations and conjurations, the Simon Necronomicon is situated within a frame tale wherein it's claimed that the grimoire was an ancient text known to Lovecraft, and that following the spells within the text, some of which demand human sacrifice, has the power to unleash dangerous forces. As to the identity of the editor, there have been various hypotheses as to who the pseudonym Simon is, none of whom are me, and it should be noted that despite the author being frequently listed at several sites as Ed Simon, the given name there seems to stand not for Edward, but rather editor, though this hasn't stopped several Gothic-inclined adolescent fans of the edition to make the same mistake that I did, and occasionally send me emails thanking me for editing the translation. I share this anecdote with you not as a parable that gives a clear-cut lesson about demonology, but because I wish to convey a bit of what I felt in that strange instant in which I genuinely wondered whether or not that cursed book with my name on the cover was actually somehow written by me. Think of it as cracked numinous. Think of it as the cracked numinous, the uncanny sense wherein, according to all those accurate cliches that describe fear, our skin crawls and our hair stands on end. If the Necronomicon is supposed to be a book that reveals the horror which exists deep within reality, the actual terrifying nature of existence that we veil behind our hypocritical pieties and our jaundiced optimism, then for a few minutes I felt like I was seeing that nature laid bare, as if I could approach the demonic singularity that radiates out such malignance through every crevice of our damned lives. As an aesthetic experience, there is something of the sublime in those instants of cosmic horror, and while I'm too cheery to think that emotion is the final word on existence, And while I'm too cheery to think that that emotion is the final word on existence, I'm also enough of a realist to know that there is something of the demonic within the core of our universe, and occasionally you're unfortunate enough to glance at it and see its warped smile and red eyes looking back at you from the depthless blackness of the abyss. Now that's an important point right there of what he's getting at about, and where I share, according to my understanding, which says all knowledge and all power is in all places at all times, right? This is my thesis. What he says here. He says there is something of the demonic within the core of our universe, and occasionally you're unfortunate enough to glance it and see it, its warped smile and red eyes looking back at you from the depthless blackness of the abyss. We conjure these things. We create toolbooks. We are the ones that make it. Our thoughts become things. All right. Continuing. When I reveal that I'm writing a book about demonology, I'm invariably asked if I believe that demons are actually real. Of course, I don't think that demons are actually real, is the expected response, and the one that I give. I'm a modern, secular, educated, liberal, agnostic man. I don't believe in demons and devils, goblins and ghouls, imps, vampires, werewolves, ghosts, or poltergeists either. Yet, whenever giving the doxology of all of that which we're not to have faith in, I'm mentally keeping my fingers crossed, because so much of that question depends on the definition of the words believe, demons, actually, and real. Since the Enlightenment, Western intelligentsia have been the inheritors to a rather anemic model of knowledge known as the correspondence theory of truth, whereby the validity of a statement is ascertained simply by whether or not it matches empirical reality. This is so important. This is such an important thing. Since the Enlightenment, Western intelligentsia have been the inheritors to a rather anemic model of knowledge known as the correspondence theory of truth, whereby the validity of a statement is ascertained simply by whether or not it matches empirical reality. If I say, the dog is in the yard, that statement is either true or false depending on whether or not said dog is in said yard. Easy enough. But then, what of statements like, a thing of beauty is a joy forever? I think that I shall never see a poem as lovely as a tree, or I wandered lonely as a cloud. A fundamentalist adherence to the correspondence of theory of truth, trumpeted by logical positivists and other philosophical heretics, would consign John Keats, Joyce Kilmer, and William Wordsworth to a bin marked meaningless, even though I think we can all ascertain that there is meaning, even if it's the slant truth that Emily Dickinson writes about. And so you can imagine what is made of statements about divinity and diabology, though theology has, in my estimation, always been a branch of poetics anyhow. That the correspondence theory of truth doesn't even match its own exacting prescriptions to concluding, that the correspondence theory of truth doesn't even match its own exacting prescriptions to what is legitimate or not is a bit of self-referential absurdity best passed over, concluding that as a model, it's clearly ineffectual in describing whole swaths of human experience is sufficient enough. Let's see. That the correspondence theory of truth doesn't even match its own exacting prescriptions to what is legitimate or not is a bit of self-referential absurdity best passed over, concluding that as a model, it's clearly ineffectual in describing whole swaths of human experience is sufficient enough. Okay, I got that wording. Hold on. So, concluding that as a model, it's clearly ineffectual in describing whole swaths of human experience is sufficient. Okay, there we go. Got it. Concluding that as a model, it's clearly ineffectual in describing whole swaths of human experience. Yeah, concluding that as a model, it's clearly ineffectual in describing whole swaths of human experience is sufficient enough. So if you conclude that it's ineffectual, that's sufficient enough. Okay, so you can see my difficulty with the question of whether or not I actually believe in demons. I reject the entire epistemological attitude in which the query is posed. If the question is asked in the spirit of ascertaining whether or not demons exist as tangibly as a dog in the yard, then obviously the answer is in the negative. And yet, in those moments of sublime terror when approaching the core of the cracked numinous, I can't help but know what I felt. That warped smile and those red eyes might not be staring back at me from the yard, but they're staring back from somewhere. Of the approaches that the modern person has in considering demonology, there is obviously blunt literalism, equally blunt denialism, and then a sort of vast middle that reduces demons to metaphors or symbols. That's actually more where I kind of lean in that area. But let's continue. Concerning those who think of demons as being real, as a dog in a yard, little can be said. Such fundamentalism is its own capitulation to the exigencies of modernity. It's as positivist as anyone adhering to the correspondence theory of truth. It merely chooses to assent toward that which anyone can see is an absurdity. Those who adhere to this contention may think that they're taking part in a venerable spiritual tradition, but they hold to the same epistemological framework as any rationalist or skeptic. They just choose to believe in something demonstrably wrong. Denialists are a different species. To harp on the non-existence of demons is to miss the point in the same way as the literalists, but toward a different direction. Smugly emphasizing that demons aren't real seems about the same as arguing that truth is beauty, beauty is truth. It's an absurdity because it can't be reduced to symbolic logic. Those who expel poetry in favor of the syllogism live a shallow existence. Most obnoxious of this type are those who reject anything that to them has the taint of the spiritual, the divine, the transcendent about it, consigning millennia of human experience and expression into the trash can because it doesn't conform to a model of truth that has only existed for a few dozen generations. Most appealing, perhaps, Let me move this book over. I got 4 books stacked on top of each other here. This is getting ridiculous, which is why... Oh, 5, never mind. Which is why I'm going to go get a digital reader or a new tablet, and then I'm going to go to either Walmart or Best Buy or something soon because it's getting out of control. All right. One of these guys shuffling around like in a library, like doing research on trying to gotta find out how to get rid of these demons. All right. So most appealing is perhaps those who maintain that demons are potent and powerful explanatory symbols, that they are deeply significant metaphors. Such a position has the benefit of being partially true, of course. Demons are powerful metaphors. In Lucifer, we have a symbol of unbridled pride. In Azazel, the intermixing of good and evil. In Moloch, the horrors of rapacious consumption. And of course, from a literal perspective, one need not believe that there is a bat-winged entity in the bowels of the earth, or that goat and bull-headed deities stalk our nighttime. Yet there is something finally satisfying in reducing the demonic to the mere metaphorical. I do not say that with any self-satisfaction, for metaphor is the grand medium. I do not say that with any self-satisfaction, for metaphor is the grand medium of language, the atoms of our thoughts and emotions, wherein no true human expression can take place without that blessed word like. When considering the demonic, however, the metaphorical model offers what ultimately an incomplete understanding of something that is realer than real, which exists in dark poetry that is uttered beyond the realm of mere words. Demonic names are performative, they're incantatory, they're ritualistic, and even though they don't correspond to actual things in the real world, they very much gesture toward that aforementioned dark something. Between the correspondence theory of truth and the metaphorical theory of truth, I propose a third option, that our demonology conforms to some type of reality, but an ineffable one, a hidden one, an inexpressible one that can neither be measured nor understood, but that is somehow closer to us than the atoms of our very breath. In such a schema, it is held that the postulates of demonology are always poetic, that they are not to be verified or disproven, and that the signifier and signified of the word demon is forever deferred. Holding that words like demonic or satanic are metaphorical terms for evil, that they carry within them all the overloaded cultural connotations that they imply, is an obvious truism, but they're more than metaphors as well. What is the reality to which they refer What is the reality to which they refer, endlessly contingent and always shifting, filtered through centuries and a multitude of cultures and faiths? I have no idea, having never seen behind the veil. That is the nature of the numinous. It's forever beyond my simple comprehension, or of anyone else's perceptions as well, for that matter. In Pandemonium, there is an emphasis on the importance of demonic names: Azazel, Mephistopheles, Lucifer, Baphomet, Moloch, and so on. Because being able to give a proper name to something is crucial to controlling it. Man, I just said that earlier. All right, crucial to controlling it. An inviolate principle of demonology. Yep, that's what I learned as well. Okay, so being able to give a proper name to something is crucial to controlling it. An inviolate principle of demonology. Don't mistake my personal argument as being that these names refer to things in quite the same way that the word car simply corresponds to that which is parked in front of my house. The truths that they convey are something far more elemental, charged, and indefinable. The German Lutheran theologian Paul Tillich wrote in his 1951 Systematic Theology that God does not exist. He is being itself beyond essence and existence. Therefore, all knowledge and all power are in all places at all times. Continuing. Let's see. It says, so the German Lutheran theologian Paul Tillich wrote in his 1951 Systematic Theology that God does not exist. He is being itself, beyond essence and existence. Therefore, to argue that God exists is to deny him, insomuch as the demonic is within the realm of the sacred, where that word connotes not goodness so much as those things that are other from our profane reality. I think that paradoxically something like this is true for demons as well. To argue that God exists is to deny him, insomuch as the demonic is within the realm of the sacred, where that word connotes not goodness so much as those things that are other from our profane reality. I think that paradoxically something like this is true for demons as well. What's offered then is a theory of demonology as filtered through something that I call demonic poetics. As a neologism, it is meant to refer to the parsing of how humans have interacted with this numinous reality, this demonic something throughout history. Poetics, because there is an understanding that literary language is relative, allegorical, symbolic, metaphorical, and that it gestures toward the transcendent, demonic, for obvious reasons. When presenting a history of demonology, what is necessarily being explicated is humanity's understanding of the subject rather than the reality of itself, for the simple reason that the latter is impossible to approach rationally. The truth is difficult to get at. It is dynamic rather than static, and exists in the tension between the knower and that which is known, writes Jeffrey Burton Russell in Mephistopheles, the devil in the modern world. We cannot even grasp ultimate truth, but we can point toward that truth by engaging ourselves, by thinking clearly, and by not muddling categories. Chief among the categorical mistakes people make is to assume that a scientific truth is the same across all domains of experience, an error that is the heresy of positivism. That's not to reject science at all, far from it, for as Russell makes clear, the empirical method is the most impressive and dramatic system in human experience. But that has led some to erroneously assume it's the only system, and to thus reject truths that in poetry and faith would be nonsensical in science, and it is within the former that demons live. Russell, whose knowledge and reasoning have indelibly marked pandemonium, sought a phenomenological approach. So Russell, whose knowledge and reasoning have indelibly marked pandemonium, sought a phenomenological approach to understanding absolute evil, wherein the subject of the satanic and the demonic can't be approached the same way that we discuss a chemical reaction or genetic sequencing, but rather by examining the experience of people as they've been impacted by that ineffable something hidden beyond the sensory realm. His attitude is such that though it is true that the devil cannot exist in a scientific sense, he can still exist in a theological sense, in a mythological sense, in a psychological sense, and in a historical sense. And these approaches are, like science, capable of fixing a course on truth. What's clear, obviously, is that many people in the past did literally believe in demons, and that they were as tangible and visceral as a hammer and a chair. But because the largest swath of human history also coincided with the experience of a charged and enchanted reality, there was also always the perspective that demons, and all other sacred things, had an elevated, transcendent, realer-than-real constitution to them as well. Because ours is an era rendered anemic by the tyranny of positivism, where disenchantment reduces everything to the ontological status of a hammer or a chair, we've tended to disbelieve in things that can't be measured and weighed. Russell and I agree that there is a philosophical that is a philosophical mistake. All right, so once again, we've tended to disbelieve in things that can't be measured and weighed. Russell and I agree that that is a philosophical mistake. I see no reason why my not believing in imps scampering through the darkness of my basement means that I must reject the existence of demons crawling through the blackness of my soul. To that end, I would pose several principles that motivate this work. Pandemonium will largely be an exegesis Pandemonium will largely be an exegesis. What the fuck is that? I've seen a word before, exegesis. I know it's something simple like expression or retelling and counting, but I gotta look at it to make sure. Exegesis. Let's see. Oh my gosh, I need 2 hands for this. But I don't want to use this exegesis. This is such a fun word. Now, where's the Googles? Google, where did you go? Oh, there we go. Exegesis. There we go. Exegesis. Yeah, it is exegesis. Critical explanation or interpretation. Okay, so critical explanation or interpretation. Okay, so Pandemonium will largely be a critical explanation or interpretation. So Pandemonium will largely be an exegesis of these principles, though they in large part emerge through the actual writing of the book itself. As a set of axioms or arguments or theses, they are not necessarily self-evident, which is, of course, part of the reason why I have systematized them. There is a sense in which Pandemonium's chapters have been organized according to this schema, such as in analyzing a given demon who is representative of an era's zeitgeist, the focus on close readings of literary works, and the emphasis on the variability of individual demons' symbolic import, as with Lucifer's evolution from being the embodiment of evil and rebellion to being understood as a romantic hero. It's taken as a motivating given that there is this intangible something, an ineffable sacred for which language is inadequate, so that our discourse must always be constructed, though no less significant for it. Throughout this book, you may discover that, true to its subtitle, Pandemonium is more a history of demonology than it is of individual demons. Certainly, all that you would expect is in here in terms of demonic hierarchies, ancient grimoires with their incantations, and the conjurers who garnered reputation for working in the occult arts. Certainly, all that you would expect is here in terms of demonic hierarchies, ancient grimoires with their incantations, and the conjurers who garnered a reputation for working in the occult arts. There will be ample consideration given to otherworldly entities with names like Baal and Mammon, but more than an encyclopedic listing of such creatures, for there are other volumes which do that. This is the first comprehensive popular history of demonology as a discipline of study. That means that the focus is on how people, from Cornelius Agrippa to John Dee, Aleister Crowley to Anton LaVey, have imagined the demonic and the resultant work that they produced in that regard. Furthermore, Pandemonium doesn't limit itself to figures normally categorized as occultists. I also provide an analysis of how the demonic influenced the work of ostensibly mainstream philosophers like René Descartes, Friedrich Nietzsche, and Hannah Arendt, among others. The Hermetic tradition, so often marginalized by mainstream academe, has exerted a greater influence than has been supposed, and the glittering sheen of the demonic can be espied within the canon far more than is given credit. Though I am technically an academic, Pandemonium is not a traditional scholarly volume, though it is an interpretive and a critical one, and I've certainly relied on the invaluable research of historians, theologians, philosophers, and literary theorists, and make no claims to this being a comprehensive study, though it is wide-ranging. Undoubtedly, Pandemonium reflects my biases, interests, blind spots, and prejudices, so for that I beg a certain indulgence and understanding. More important than any individual analyses, any particular close reading, any recounting of a particular figure, event, or text, that's what's most crucial is the basic argument of Pandemonium. That, because Satan is the prince of this world, any history of demonology is de facto also a history of the world. Demonic poetics is always an expression of the ineffable, where our words are ever variable, so that demons provide invaluable imaginative metaphors for each epoch to uniquely understand itself in relation to not just evil, but reality more generally. In the details, there is certainly much to quibble about, but to the detriment of my academic career, I've always held that it's more important to be interesting than completely correct. And while I hope that I'm both, the bulk of desire is that I'm at least the first. Alright, there's a lot more. I'm not going to read that. That is an interesting introduction. I mean, this definitely, it's called a visual history, but I mean, like that introduction, as wordy as it is, there's 2.5, there's at least two more pages. I mean, that's something I need to read to myself. But yeah, it's a beautiful book, nice hardcover. It's really, really great. I'm definitely going to love digging into this. So, what did I can't find the demon in the nun. Valak, I only found it one place, and it's a pretty little boy demon. It looks like a little cherub with big puffy cheeks, riding on a dragon. And so they picked a really good obscure demon so that they could fluff it out with all kind of stuff that's not in history. So now Valak or Volok is officially a demon nun and the crooked man. So now we have a new version of Volak for the modern times, courtesy of Ed and Lorraine Warren and their whole mythos and lore and their supposed cases, as well as the movies that were inspired by them. Oh boy. But it's a good thing, right? That we don't have much more to go on with that. They can take so much creative license with it as much as possible, and as the introduction to this book says and goes on and on about, there's a lot to be said about not only the people's actual belief in real demons, but also in the metaphors that can be had, and also in that ineffable, inexpressible something that is not necessarily staring back at us from the backyard, but is staring back at us from somewhere. There is evil in the world, and we can call it demons and devils and whatnot. But just the same way, there's a lot of good in the world, and we can call it angels and gods and what have you as well. So, will I ever find Valak anywhere else? I don't know. But I don't think I'm going to look too hard. But I already looked for Jungler from, the movie, the Eric Bana, Deliver Us from Evil. That was a good one. I actually watched that again. It was actually pretty cool. I don't like the, I don't know, there's so many of these movies nowadays with these supposedly based on these police officers and priests who, like, they're based on their real life story. Like, what's the agenda being pushed here? And if you guys listen if you go to Spreaker on the, I forget which podcast it's on. It's the Hakeem Ali Bocas Alexander one on Spreaker. I had a 10-hour, if you can believe it, discussion with William Bonatati, and he reveals some insight. He's a person who was abused by the Catholic Church, who brought charges and was part of the investigation with the Supreme Court and the Attorney General of New York in bringing up cases against the Catholic Church. He pointed out that a much, much higher percentage of police officers are Catholic than in the normal general society, like a much larger number. So, like, just for example, because I don't know the numbers, it's something like if in the general population, 3% of people are Catholic, in the general world population, in the United States police is something like 25%, which is crazy. So, who knows? There's some interesting connection there. And he also spoke about how the police he got arrested for trying to bring these things to light and stuff like that. So that's pretty fucking evil right there. That's demonic, if anything. Some of the real demons running around our society are running around behind the closed doors of churches. Finding Valak, hunting the demon in the nun.